Hello, and how was your weekend, folks? Thank you very much for joining me today. I've got a great guest, part of my Gen Z, Zeries series. I think this is number 5. Young Sam Schwartz will join me to talk about his activism and advocacy on gun violence prevention movement, which he's been a huge part of since his cousin, who is very close with, when they were 14 years old, Alex Schachter, was murdered in the hallways of Marjory Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida. Samuel Schwartz, a really powerful, amazing conversation for you on the Monday episode, on today's episode 994 of Stand Up. If you want to fast forward through news and notes, that conversation with young Sam Schwartz begins at 29 minutes in. Longer news segment today. But I hope you stay, because I have a bunch I want to share with you. Headlines, sound, and an announcement. So I mentioned this last week and have been teasing it here and there, but it is official. We are finally having a Stand Up with Pete Dominick gathering. It's March 22nd and 23rd in Las Vegas. Thank you very much to Cassie in Vegas for putting this all together and producing it and funding it. Very excited to have you there and hope that you will fly out. We know it's short notice. We know flights are expensive. We know, if you're like me, you don't love Vegas, but I certainly do love all of you, and I love Cassie. And I would go anywhere that you folks want to gather, and that would be my favorite place to be. So, and I'm very excited to hang out with her and her family, who I've met, and so many, hopefully, of the rest of you. It's going to be very exciting. We've got John Carroll performing on Saturday night, as well as Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg, J.L. Covan, and I'm inviting a whole bunch of our favorite podcasters. More names will be added. Many of your favorites will all be there. We'll tape our podcasts all day Saturday, and then we will do comedy and music at night on Saturday night, and on Friday night we'll also be hanging out as well. So please get your tickets to come out to Las Vegas Friday and Saturday, March 22nd and 23rd. More details and links to all of it as we finalize it, but that is the big news. As well as this week, we will hit 1,000 episodes here on Stand Up, so I think that's maybe what we'll ostensibly be celebrating, and just all of us, the community that we have built, of course. 1,000 episodes of Stand Up. Couldn't do it without you folks, and I can't continue to. So thank you very much for funding this, my work, our community. Go to standupwithpete.com to learn more, or patreon.com/Pete Dominick to sign up now for as little as $5 a month and have access to our amazing group of thoughtful, generous, brilliant, hilarious, empathic people who want to connect with you on Discord or in our marketplace that we will soon be dedicating a web page to. So if you sell anything, you can do it there, a good or a service. That's coming very soon as well. A lot of exciting things coming here in year 4 and the next 1,000 episodes. I love doing this. I love my work. I love these guests, and I so appreciate and am so grateful for your support. And while I've got you on that, I will be dropping a brand new stand-up comedy special. It's posting on Dry Bar Comedy's YouTube channel on Thursday, the 14th. I taped it a year ago in Utah. It's a family-friendly, almost 30-minute set that I just watched. I'm really proud of how it came out. I'm really excited to it. I wasn't sure if I was going to promote it that much because I wasn't sure how great it was, and it's actually really good. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think I'm going to use it to get back into doing more dates, which is something I was always planning to do, a lot more stand-up. Once Julia got her license and needed me that much less, Ava, of course, at college, and let's get out on the road, hopefully, in 2024, doing more stand-up dates, including in Las Vegas. So I'll drop a link in today, if not tomorrow's show notes, and then pretty much every day's for a long time for you to go watch that special on YouTube. The more views I get, the more potential I might get a couple bucks off of it, but more importantly, get actually more stand-up work as a result of that. So that's it for the announcements. Vegas, show 1,000, and watch my new stand-up special. It's called Professional Parent, and it drops this week. And expect the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday shows to either never drop or just be the interview, because I'm going skiing with my high school pals this week, midweek in Vermont. First time. Hope I'm ready. Very excited for that, and I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to post, but I should be able to get at least an interview up every day this week. That's the plan as of now, but bear with me as I take a little time off to be with my pals from high school as we shred the Green Mountains. All right, let's get to those headlines and some sound. This news recap is quickly becoming the greatest daily news recap in all of podcasting, according to 7 comments I got from you. Feel free to write about how much you appreciate and get out of the news segment here on Stand Up so that you could be the 8th person to email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, to tell me that you love it. And there's no better place to recap the news than right here at the beginning of every day, Monday through Thursday, Stand Up with Pete Dominick. We're in the Shed newsroom, and obviously plenty of headlines from the weekend. I feel like one of the biggest stories has to be that Elon Musk restored Alex Jones' Twitter account, and then they met and had a conversation on Twitter Spaces to attract more attention to, well, worst and worster is, I think it's easiest said. This will certainly mean that more people will leave Twitter and head to places like Threads and all of the other options, where I certainly am posting more. So follow me there. That's a big story. Elon Musk restoring Alex Jones' account after he did a fake poll on whether to reinstate the infamous evil conspiracy theorist who has done so much damage to our country, our conversation, our psyches, and the victims of the Newtown school shooting. And a new poll from the Wall Street Journal out Saturday has Nikki Haley absolutely wrecking Joe Biden by a whopping 17 points. Trump tops Biden by 4, but it's a year out, and we shouldn't be paying too close attention to such polls. But, of course, it gives everybody something to talk about. Not me. Just thought I'd mention it. Hey, maybe Republican voters will think she has a better chance to win. Doubtful. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy has now endorsed Donald Trump for president. He said he would also be willing to serve in Trump's cabinet because he is a shallow, hollow, principleless man with 0 friends and nowhere to go except for deeper into the hall of history's villains. Kevin McCarthy officially endorsing disgraced former president and known rapist Donald Trump. How come we don't remind people how much of a rapist he is enough? University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill resigned over the weekend amid the bipartisan backlash and calls for her removal over comments she gave to Congress at a hearing on rising anti-Semitism on college campuses. The pressure is on presidents of Harvard and I think one other university at least to do the same. We'll see what happens with that. I don't have a lot of thoughts. I'm not really read in on those stories, much as have opinions on them. Let's see what else have I got from the Middle East. The war in Gaza. Israel said some Hamas fighters had surrendered in northern Gaza and that it had intensified its offensive in the south. The State Department bypassed Congress to push through a government sale of tank ammunition to Israel. So, okay, that's interesting to note. The New York Times and other outlets have more interesting, relevant, and important reporting, I think, that helps us illustrate how complicated the Arab-Israeli conflict is with all of its overlapping, competing geopolitical, national security, business interests. For years, the country of Qatar, according to the New York Times, sent millions of dollars to Gaza, which helped prop up Hamas. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu's government, encouraged those payments, believing that a steady flow of money maintained peace. That's how it's phrased at the New York Times. But read the reporting from The Guardian and other outlets on that. That is such a really important detail that Benjamin Netanyahu helped prop up Hamas. Dig into it some more. The Iranian-backed Houthi militia threatened to block any ships sailing to Israeli ports, expanding previous threats against vessels owned or operated by the Israelis. The Nobel Award ceremony, I should say, was yesterday. Egypt held presidential elections yesterday, and the new president, right-wing autocratic president, seemingly, of Argentina, Javier Milei, was sworn in yesterday. The Golden Globe nominations are announced today, if you care about that. The Federal Reserve is set to decide whether to raise interest rates on Wednesday. I bet you care about that. And Friday is the last day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to all those celebrating. The COP28 climate conference ends tomorrow, Tuesday, and news that Azerbaijan, a major oil and gas producer, is expected to host next year's United Nations Climate Summit. And in a months-long standoff, I'll certainly have folks on to recap what happened, what was accomplished at COP28. Journalists, scientists, and more. Who you listen to? Who do you want me to have on? Of course, always want to hear from you on that. At least 14 people were victims of cartel violence killed as residents of a small farming town in central Mexico. They fought back against the cartel's extortion attempt, and really important story coming out of Mexico. Those people are probably all heroes. I want to read more and dig in more into that. A controversial story about the ACLU agreeing to represent the NRA. How about that? A free speech case before the Supreme Court. They maintain it does not support the NRA's mission, but they do support free speech, and that is a big controversial story over the weekend. And finally, the most coveted free agent in baseball became the highest paid athlete in all of sports, signing a 10-year, $700 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani is his name, and that's all I have to say about that. It's $70 million a year. Not bad for swinging a bat. And finally, scientists found a 75-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus rex fossil with its last meal in its stomach, and apparently it's Shake Shack, which is really shocking. I had no idea they had it at that time, but that is what some evangelicals would have you believe. All right, those are your headlines, rapid-fire style. Now let's get to some of the audio and sound I aggregated from the Sunday shows and more. Let's start with something fun and satisfying, in my opinion. This is the Attorney General of New York. My powerful Attorney General name is Letitia James, and over the weekend she posted a scathing video in which she broke down the ways in which she believes former President Donald Trump's expert witnesses actually helped her case against him. Of course, Trump was in court once again this past week for the trial and fraud being presided over by this guy, Judge Arthur Engoron, and he apparently is not going to be in court this week, he announced in some kind of a rant on Truth Social. But here is Attorney General Letitia James, posted a video claiming Trump expert witnesses helped her fraud case.
Today we concluded the 10th week of our trial against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. Over the past few days, we continued to hear testimony from the defendants' many expert witnesses. And one of these experts admitted that the valuations of some of the properties on Donald Trump's statement of financial condition were neither proper nor reasonable. Another one of their experts is a member of Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's private club that he continues to claim is solely a residence. In fact, this witness testified that he was at Mar-a-Lago when he ran into Donald Trump, who asked him for help with an issue in New York. That issue was our lawsuit. We also heard from an accounting professor whose fees are paid by Save America, Donald Trump's political action committee. He testified that the value of Donald Trump's triplex was inflated. On that, we can agree. But he also had a lot to say about Donald Trump's statements of financial condition, even though he has not prepared a financial statement since the 1980s. Donald Trump can continue to try to distract from reality. He can continue to call me names. But as the judge said today, the standard is truth. And the truth is on our side.
Oh, wow, that's powerful, right? She's good, huh? Well, there you go. Letitia James, and that trial, I think, is going to conclude this week, but check me on that. Now, Trump, for his own part, was out on the campaign trail, and I rarely play his voice, so trigger alert, I am going to play a very short clip of the president, the former disgraced president, I should say, who during his speech before the New York Young Republican Club on this past Saturday night talked about the fallout from the footage from the Access Hollywood tape that took place during the 2016 campaign there, where he claimed a general once told him that his response to the infamous Access Hollywood tape was the, quote, bravest thing he's ever seen. And I play this clip for you partially just to crowbar a clip of me dressing down Billy Bush on Real Time with Bill Maher and redefining locker room talk for, well, the most of us. And also because it's the first time we've heard Trump claim this, and it's such a clear and transparently ridiculous and should be an embarrassing thing to say, but somehow it's not to the cult.
But I went onto that stage just a few days later, and a general who's a fantastic general actually said to me, "Sir, I've been on the battlefield. Men have gone down on my left and on my right. I stood on hills where soldiers were killed. But I believe the bravest thing I've ever seen was the night you went onto that stage with Hillary Clinton after what happened. And then that woman asked you the first question about it. And I said, locker room talk. It's locker room talk. What the hell? What are you talking? Locker room talk. That was not a great...
Yeah. Locker room talk is all it was, And, of course, that never happened, that conversation with the fake general that he made up for that audience. But it did remind me of the time I was on Real Time with Bill Maher, and Billy Bush was there. Of course, Billy Bush, Access Hollywood reporter who was on the bus that Trump was talking to him when he said the infamous grab them by the pussy quote. And so I thought I would remind people of what normal guys see and think about locker room talk. How we define it, if you will. This was one of those moments in my career, and on that show I was waiting for. I knew that Bill Maher was going to say something to me that I would have to come up with a quick response for, or else it was not going to look great for me. Pretty sure I nailed it with this one.
From Maya Angelou, when you knew better, you did better.
Here's a good quote. Here's a good quote from an Australian general after their sexual assault epidemic. It's a shorter version of what Nair said. And the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And I don't know. I never thought I'd say, with all due respect, Billy Bush, you chose that job. You were in that situation. And your situation is now representative of what Nair said. Every single one of us has to stand up in those moments. That's the only way it turns around. You could have. You should have. You didn't. In the future, I hope you will. And I hope everybody that saw that and heard that tape knows that is unacceptable. And you have to stand up to assholes everywhere all the time. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept.
So
how courageous, I know. But I mean, that's...
I know, but so... In your life, off camera, you never had locker room talk with another guy like that. Before 2017, you were always completely respectful in your own private talkings with other men.
Absolutely not. I objectified women. I looked at women as vessels to be conquered when I was growing up, but I matured at some point. I had good role models, and the idea is, locker room talk for me was I would like to have sex with that girl, and another guy would say she's never going to fuck you. That's what happened. That's what it sounded like to us. That was locker room talk. You didn't say I'm going to take sex from that girl, and if some guy did say that, even when I was in 7th grade, yes, I would have shut him down.
Yeah.
That final from Bill Maher was about as validation as I ever needed from him, and I think hopefully proved to folks watching and listening, we're not all creeps, we're not all rapists, and it was just such a ridiculous claim at the time, and continues to be. So if that comes back up, I like to regurgitate my finest minute and a half, perhaps on television. All right, what else do I have for you from the weekend in audio? How about this from CNN on Friday? The lead with Jay Tapper, Congressman Dan Goldman, Democrat of New York, on shortly after an appearance by Comer Pyle, Congressman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, where one explosive Republican allegation was that Joe Biden threatened to withhold aid from the Ukrainian government if it did not fire a prosecutor who was investigating Burisma energy company on whose board Hunter Biden sat. Well, that claim, of course, has been debunked and dunked on over and over and over again. But Comer also alleged to Jake Tapper that by indicting Hunter Biden on 9 federal tax counts on Thursday, the Department of Justice is actually trying to protect the president's son. How about that? Listen to that if you haven't heard it.
We think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We think there are many more crimes. And my concern is that Weiss may have indicted Hunter Biden to protect him from having to be deposed.
Yes.
In the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday.
He indicted him to protect him. Yes. The classic rubric. He indicted him to protect him. I got it.
Well, look, Jake, this whole thing's been about a cover-up. You know, you've got two.
That's why he indicted him to protect him, to cover it up?
Well, you indict him on the least little thing, the gun charge, and not paying taxes.
He's facing like 17 additional years in prison.
Yeah, but look what he's
felonies.
done. Anybody else in America would already be in prison. You say he owes $2 million. He may owe $7 or $8 million. If these loans are fraudulent loans, I mean, a loan means you are going to pay it back. So look, but at the end of the day, this money's coming from bad people around the world. Yeah. Why are they paying Hunter Biden? We believe that it's because they wanted direct access to Joe Biden. And I don't think any American, whether they're Democrat or Republican, would want to have a president that's compromised to our biggest enemy in the world, China.
Okay, well, Jake Tapper, bravo on that. I don't know how else you're supposed to handle that. But then he immediately had Daniel Goldman on to offer a rebuttal. So here's that pretty satisfying and convincing response from the Democrat from New York, Dan Goldman, on CNN.
Congressman, I'm not sure if you heard our interview with Chairman Comer, but he said that he thinks U.S. Attorney David Weiss indicted Hunter Biden in order to protect him because he's using the lesser charges. I couldn't really make out much sense of it, but I did want to give you an opportunity as a Democrat on the committee to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I think through that whole interview, what's up is down and what's down is up for Chairman Comer. The only reason I think Hunter Biden was prosecuted and charged with these crimes, which almost are never charged for the gun charge and would be settled civilly for the tax charges, is because of Chairman Comer and House Republicans' undue and improper interference in an ongoing criminal investigation. But that's the least of concerns about what he said. Chairman Comer may be a great farmer, Jake, but he has no idea what he's talking about with criminal law. I was a federal prosecutor for 10 years. There is nothing remotely close to a FARA violation or to money laundering. I don't think he knows what they are and certainly doesn't understand what would be required by that. And what was particularly noteworthy is I thought you asked a very good question to actually name evidence, because every time Chairman Comer goes on TV, he makes bold accusations about all these crimes, and they, even though it's only Hunter Biden. And the only piece of evidence that he pointed to was the Burisma issue where Joe Biden encouraged Ukraine to fire the prosecutor general Shokin. That has been proven up, down, left, right, every single which way to be completely bogus. And in fact, firing Shokin, who was not prosecuting corruption, was actually bad for Burisma and therefore bad for Hunter Biden. This is a house of cards with no evidence, and Chairman Comer just proved that to you.
There you go, Daniel Goldman on CNN with Jay Tapper, putting to bed all the Comer pile bullshit. And now let's stay with the right-winger. Stuart Varney of Fox Business, he was on Fox and Friends on Friday, and he had to talk about the good job numbers, which came out Friday. November's jobs report showed the economy added 199,000 jobs last month. The unemployment rate decreased to 3.7%. Economists had expected job creation of 180,000 and an unemployment rate of 3.9%. But Ainsley Earhart is trying to blame it on Christmas. Stuart Varney ain't having it. He's given a little bit of the truth and saying immediately, of course, this is going to be good for the incumbent president, Joe Biden. I thought this was interesting, mainly because Ainsley Earhart seems so sad about the good job numbers. Talk about a war on Christmas.
A Fox Business alert. The November jobs report just released with unemployment rates beating expectations, edging down to 3.7%. And U.S. employers added 199,000 new jobs to the economy, also up from 180,000 that economists were expecting. Here with reaction is host of Varney and Company, An American Built on Fox Business, Stuart Varney. Hey, Stuart.
Good morning.
What do you think about these numbers?
It's a resilient labor market, and President Biden is going to talk about this at some point today because these are good numbers for Bidenomics. 199,000 jobs added to the economy. That's a bit more than expected. There's resilience there. The unemployment rate down to 3.7%. You'll tout that big time because he'll say that's Bidenomics at work. And that is historically a very low unemployment rate.
Because of Christmas? More people are working in shops?
Strangely enough, retail employment actually went down. Well,
really?
It didn't go down. It just came in at 28,000 new retail jobs. Okay. That's very weak for this time of year. The other side of the coin is that you're probably looking at no rate cuts from the Federal Reserve in the early part of next year because this shows strength in the labor market, strength in the economy. And when you see that, the Fed is not going to lower rates, not going to raise rates, and it's probably not going to lower rates in the immediate future. So steady as she goes. You've got a labor market that is resilient. which is surprising because you've had a whole year of interest rate increases by the Federal Reserve. You've still got 199,000 jobs added to the economy. So you've got resilience there. Mm-hmm. Biden will say, this is Bidenomics. This is looking good. Vote for me.
There you go. There you go. Now let's head over quickly to Ainsley Earhart's boyfriend, Sean Hannity. I think they're dating in real life. So seriously, look it up. But he actually said this, which is crazy. It's a 5-second clip, and it's just to get you triggered before we go to the Saturday Night Live weekend update for some laughs.
Now, how would you feel if a prosecutor started combing through every aspect of your life in search of a crime and then dragging your children into it simply because they don't like you, they don't like your politics?
Of course, he knows exactly what he's doing there, and we all do as well. He's pretending to talk about looking into Trump's kids when, in fact, of course, we just heard Comer Pyle talking about Hunter Biden, and that's all they've been doing is going after the current president's son. So, yeah, we know what you did there, Sean. All right, finally, let's get some laughs before we get to a very serious and important conversation with my guest today, Sam Schwartz, on gun violence prevention. Saturday Night Live was live this past Saturday, and I always love the weekend update segment and try to grab a bit of it for you.
A federal indictment issued this week against Hunter Biden alleges that he evaded paying over $1 million of taxes between 2016 and 2020. And they're only catching him now? Man, this is super embarrassing for whoever was president from 2016 to 2020. The indictment claims that instead of paying taxes, Hunter Biden spent his money on drugs and escorts. But honestly, it would have been more surprising if he remembered to do his taxes during that time. No one finishes doing cocaine with a hooker and is like, could I get a receipt?
Speak for yourself. If convicted, Hunter Biden could be sentenced to up to 17 years in prison, which would be the first time any Biden has successfully completed a sentence.
Oh, come on.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said that he is blurring the faces on the footage of January 6 rioters so that none of them would be charged with a crime. So unfortunately, we'll never know who they are.
A blurred out Colin Jost.
It's Photoshop. The president of the University of Pennsylvania has resigned after appearing to dodge questions about genocide during a congressional hearing on campus anti-Semitism. She will be replaced by literally anyone who knows you say genocide is bad. The whole crazy part is that the whole point during her speech was that free speech on campus should never be punished. And then she was immediately punished for her speech. Victor Manuel Roca, a former U.S. ambassador, has been charged with spying for Cuba since 1981. And that's why Cuba is the unstoppable superpower they are today.
A new poll finds that New York Mayor Eric Adams' approval rating is just 28%. Now, that sounds low. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy admitted in a new interview that he flew 2 times on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, but only to make sure none of those girls were vaccinated.
Oh, that is a good one. I like it a lot.
On his website, truthsocial. I'm going to guess scam, Donald Trump denied reports that he was so depressed after the 2020 election that he stopped eating, saying, quote, "It was not that I was not eating, it was that I was eating too much." Wow, good save. That's like when a rumor went around middle school that I had peed my pants, and I was like, joke's on you, because I actually pooped them.
Yeah, there you go. Weekend update with Colin Jost and Michael Che on Saturday Night Live this past Saturday night. Like to end the news segment on a laugh because there is enough to be worried about, but a reminder at every moment all over the world there is much more love being spread and shared than hate, and always good to find humor and laugh. Thanks, guys. And now let's get to my guest. Okay. On February 14th, 2018, 17 students and staff were shot dead at the Marjory, Stoneman, Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. One of them was 14-year-old Alex Schachter. Also 14 years old was his cousin, Sam Schwartz. And as a result of the tragedy that struck his family and his community, Sam has dedicated much of his life to gun violence prevention. And he's already accomplished so much at only age 18. He's a full-time college student at the New England Conservatory and Music School in Boston. And I wanted to feature Sam as part of our Gen Z Gen Zeries. First guy I've had. I think I've had 4 young women on. But I think it's really important that we continue to have a serious, thoughtful, thought-provoking, mature, open-minded conversation with young people about what they're dealing with, what they're going through, how they see things. That's the effort here with the Gen Zeries. And Sam Schwartz comes highly recommended from my friend Joanne Carducci, JoJo in Jers, who has been collaborating with me and giving me some great guest ideas, suggestions. She connected me with Sam. And I think we had a great conversation, almost an hour long. We went all over the place. I edited it up real nice for you, and I think it sounds good. And I learned a lot from Sam, and I'm looking forward to learning more and talking more with him. And also a really cool thing is he is a film composer. That's what he's studying. That's what he wants to do. And my daughter is a filmmaker. They're about the same age, and I connected them yesterday and got his opinion on the best composers ever. We talked about that. You're going to want to listen to the very end of today's conversation. I think it's poignant, inspiring, and kind of fun after such a serious conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, learn more about Sam in the show notes. Link up with him, learn more, support his work. Let's do it right now. Gen Z, Gen Zeries, Sam Schwartz. Sam, it's great to have you on the show for the first time. A real honor to have you joining us.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are a young man in college, and full-time college, and also basically full-time activism, it would seem. That's how it looks like to me. Is that accurate?
That's a good summarization. Yeah, I have to struggle to do all my schoolwork and then fly to DC at the same time. So it sucks. And usually it never works. One of them gets left behind. But a lot of kids my age who do this have the same problem.
You're trying to balance all of this. It's not very, I don't think it sounds normal for most college students to be taking on a full-time activism responsibility. What do you think?
No, I remember when I came here, I go to this school called New England Conservatory. And I remember when I came here, it's a music school, so everyone's practicing violin and stuff in the room next door. And I remember I told them about me and what I do. And hey, I'm getting on this call with Leader Schumer, and they're like, who is that? And why are you on that call?
Right.
What are you doing on that call? So yeah, it's two very, very different worlds, but this is what I wanted to do before I got into politics.
What is your musical talent?
So I'm a film composer, so I'll write music for movies. So right now I'm just doing short films around Boston of kids in the area. But that's what I wanted to do since I was a kid. And then, obviously the shooting happened. I don't want that to change what I want to do as my career, because I don't want politics to be my career. I just don't. It's not something that I would do for the rest of my life. I could not do this for the rest of my life.
Who were you before the shooting? You grew up in Florida. What was your life like, and how interested in politics were you, and activism, or specifically gun violence? Because you talk about your classmates now might not be as engaged. Were you as engaged for any reason? Your family, your upbringing, background, or any other issue?
Yeah, so I think I was always a little bit interested in politics, but that was only because my mom and dad were always telling me how bad Trump was, and this is the Republican part. Republicans don't do anything. So I grew up as a very, very liberal, in a very liberal family. All of my family is very liberal. But you asked me who was I with before the shooting? I went to an art middle school and an arts high school, played percussion. All of my friends were music majors or artists in some way. And I always say this, but I can remember vividly hearing the news of the Pulse nightclub shooting, which was 3 hours away from my house in Orlando. And then I remember thinking okay, that's the worst thing ever. But what am I going to do about that? I'm literally 12 years old. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Then I heard about the Vegas shooting, which was a year after. Thought the same thing. Man, this is so sad, but they're going to fix it, right? The adults are going to fix it. Obviously, that's what they do. They fix things. And then, yeah. And then after the Vegas shooting, the Parkland shooting happened. So at that point, obviously it hit. I thought it would never happen to me. Nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. And then it does. And it happens to people who think that way more often than it doesn't. So obviously then it took me a couple months to kind of realize what just happened to my family. I was very young. I was I just turned 14. I was very, very young. And I just didn't know anything. I think I had no social awareness. I couldn't go up onto a table and start speaking like the March for Our Lives kids. But like I was still going to the rallies with them, right? But I just was not at that level yet. Cut to the Nashville shooting, which was like 6 months ago now. I had been doing this work for 5 years, and that was a breaking point. I can talk more about what I did after that later. But I mean, just honestly, before the shooting, I was a normal kid, like every single other person who this touches. Literally thought it would never happen to me.
You're a filmmaker. I like in an interview when the phrase cut to, because it cuts through and to the next moment, which is helpful in an interview. So let's cut back to your cousin. Like, how old were you during the Parkland shooting? And tell me about your relationship with your cousin. He was your mother's father's?
So he is my mother's brother's son. So my cousin.
Cousin is Alex.
Alex Schachter.
Alex Schachter. And how old was he and how old were you?
So we were both 14. He was 6 months older than me. And he was a musician as well. He played trombone in the marching band at MSD. And yeah, we were very close. My best friend. The whole family was very close. And then obviously the shooting completely obliterated that. It went from, you have to imagine, we're just literally a normal family. No one is famous. No one does anything in the public eye. As with all of those people in Parkland, Parkland was like a random city in Florida, very safe, affluent city. No one has ever heard of Parkland. And then a massive, high-profile shooting happens, and every single person is thrusted into this national eye. And so I see my uncle with Trump. I see my uncle on the news. I see all of my friends that are in the area talking about this. And Walmart's giving out free food to everyone. All celebrities are talking about the march. And I mean,
why was your uncle with Trump?
So he worked with Trump to open I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was the National School Safety Database. And my uncle is a very a bipartisan person. He's going to work with whoever he needs to work with to get this done. That's just how he internalized this issue. And I just I'm not like him on that issue. I can't work with someone like Ted Cruz or another Republican who is going to sit there and just literally tell you that they don't care. So my uncle's work is very important, but I just can't do what he does.
Interesting. So I want to talk more about kind of that work that you've done and who you've met and who you've talked to and where you're at with it all. But I do wonder if you would share how your family is doing now, because I think we hear about the shootings and then we feel horrible and our hearts are broken, and a lot of us do try to do stuff and make a difference and so on. But I think you don't follow up with the families. Like, how is your family doing and coping? Are you still all close? Did it tear you apart for different reasons?
No, it made us much, much closer. I mean,
good.
I mean, it went, when that happened, it's like, holy shit, that just happened to us. What is happening? We have to all stick together now. I don't want to say that we're okay now. We've definitely all accepted that it's happened, but for the rest of our lives, there's always going to be like that missing, that empty chair at whatever holiday we're celebrating. And there's always, like, on vacations, you're always going to be thinking like, man, I wonder what Alex would be thinking of this. Like this, whatever current event is happening. Like, man, I wonder what Alex would have been thinking of like January 6th. Like, that's a crazy thing that just happened. I would love to ask him what his thoughts are on that. So, I mean, I think we're all at the point now where we don't just like burst into tears randomly throughout the day, which I'm sure some of us still do. But yeah, it's never going to be how it was. It tore the fabric of the family apart. It's not the same. It can never be the same. So when all of the shootings happen, there's tons of media attention. You go on all these talk shows, and then like, if you're lucky, you'll get like a month for people to know who you are, and then the next shooting will happen. I've seen shootings where it's like look at Lewiston. That was like 3 days of the national coverage, maybe not even 3 days.
Yeah.
Now it's nothing.
Right.
And that's just because the country is so desensitized to a shooting that killed, I don't even know the number, because I am desensitized. I don't even really want to look at the number anymore. And this is what I do. I don't know. It was a lot of people, and a shooting like that, I think it killed like close to 20 people. A shooting like that is not going to dominate the national landscape for the rest of time, right? Like, that's insane. That's insane. We're the only country that happens to.
Sure, yeah.
So, I guess
what else would you want people listening to know about your family and how they're doing and what their hopes are for people to hear or feel or understand? Maybe there's nothing else, but I just want to give you the opportunity because I think it's important. We don't hear this perspective. As you just articulated, things go away, but we certainly never think or know usually the families and get the opportunity to talk to them, and much less, or we don't want to. Who wants to reach out and talk to someone who's suffered like that, like on purpose? Some amazing people do, but a lot of people find it very painful.
I know. I mean, my family, my family is not in like a weird place with each other, but when we talk about how to address the issue, we all agree, right? But when my uncle Max, his job now, his life is dedicated to making schools safe, and that isn't like. That's what he chose to do. That's how he internalized this issue. And that's 100% fine, right? Like he's going to do that. School safety is a very bipartisan issue, right? Everyone agrees that we need to make schools safer. But for me, I can't do that and only that. So I'm going to go out with my mom, who founded this group called Ban Assault Weapons Now. It was originally Ban Assault Weapons Now Florida, and then you're gonna make no progress on banning assault weapons in Florida, right? Like, so now it's like a national thing. But we're gonna go out to DC and say Republicans need to get on board with an assault weapons ban, and you need to implement universal background checks, and you need to implement safe storage. And if you don't do that, you're like a corporate gun lobby shill. Like, I will say that. I will call any Republican out who I need to. And then the other thing is, like, some families don't even want to get involved. Like, and I totally understand that. Yeah. Some families don't, they shouldn't have to get involved. If you don't want to, you don't get involved. But a lot of families do. The other thing that I want to talk about is after a shooting, you really only get to if it's a high profile shooting, right? If the shooting has killed enough people, then you'll get maybe some media time. You only hear about the victims and their families. It goes so much deeper than that. Yeah. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in the community who knew a person in that shooting and who are dealing with the ramifications of that. There are people who saw the shooting and survived. There are people who were shot and survived.
I feel like one of the big ones is heard the shooting, or even as my friend's daughter was in lockdown in UNLV last week, she didn't hear the shooting, but she was in a dark bathroom with the doors locked with some other students. Whatever that experience was for her, even though she didn't see it, hear it, or lose anybody, I'll let you take it from there. But
yeah, I mean, that is so traumatizing. You sit in, even if you're in the classroom and the shooter went near you, you are hiding for your life from a shooter who could have walked in. You don't know where he is. You don't know. And all we hear about it on the news all the time now, like the kids are in the classroom, the shooter shot through the windows, shot through the door, shot through the wall. That can happen at any point in this lockdown drill. It's not even schools. It's like you're in the mall. There's videos of all these mall shootings. People are just ducking into the food court. I mean, it is literally like every single person who was at the general vicinity is going to need probably years of in-depth therapy. And that is just as horrible as the families who's lost someone, right? Like, you can't compare to the grief, obviously, but like that is also something that is a huge issue here. The mental health ramifications of this, and we never talk about it because like there's no room to talk about it. There's so much that's already wrong with the families who lost someone, but we never talk about that. And it's a real thing.
Yeah, we'll call it for lack of a better psychological term that we don't have at our fingertips, a kind of a ripple effect that never goes away. And we should probably always be speaking in language that allows for the fact that not everybody is traumatized the same way to the same extent. People have different modalities of coping with it. But I think what we're talking about is there should be resources available, best practices, financed for people who have gone through this and want to find a way to be able to function, to be able to work, to be able to live and love without having to be freaked out every time they hear something drop on the floor, or every time they can't go to the mall or leave their home or go to their school and all of these things. Those resources should be available. Yeah. They should be financed because of the ripple effect of how many different types of victimization there are. How am I doing? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, and now there is, for the first time in American history, there are those resources available, and it's because of the president and it's because of the vice president. They just opened the Office of Gun Violence Prevention like a month and a half ago, And since they have been open, it's led by gun violence survivors, Rob Wilcox and Greg Jackson. They are gun violence survivors. They know the issue. They know how to fix the issue. And they were doing work with Brady and then CJ Action Fund. They are now leading they're working in the West Wing on this issue. So when Lewiston happened, they were on the ground helping not only the victims' families, but the people who watched it and the people who heard it, which is also horrific. So now there are those resources, and I'm sure, in the past, the president would travel there, but I don't think they were getting the resources like they are now for the first time ever. And we probably won't be able to see the long-term effects and the positive effects that this will have for years out. We're not going to have the data. We're not going to have the studies done for a long time. But for the first time ever, that is happening now.
I'd be interested to talk with someone who's doing that work to understand what exactly those resources look like, what they mean, how well funded. It's the kind of thing you can see being underfunded. I mean, how could you possibly have the type of resources needed to help hundreds or thousands of people who witness these kind of things? I mean, if it happens in your community, by the way, you should mention, if you were home safely and it happened in your community at the parade or at the school or at the synagogue, you are also traumatized. And so how do you resource the type of teams, psychologists, and et cetera, whatever healthcare people need to keep it, to sustain it, much less after a natural disaster? It's hard. There's two,
I always think of the Highland Park shooting, which is a parade shooting. All of those people who were walking down the street, probably thousands of them, they are right. They literally, I mean, I cannot, and I didn't survive a shooting, right? I didn't survive anything. My cousin died. Those people were just thrown into basically a war zone. They were thrown into a Middle Eastern war, where all of a sudden they're walking with their kids down the street. They hear gunshots, which they might have thought, okay, maybe it's fireworks or early fireworks. No, they see a body drop. Now they're going to run. Yeah. My friend Ashby Beasley was there with her 6-year-old at the time son, Bo. This kid dropped to the floor and it was asking not to die. That right there is the worst thing that I could imagine happening, and that happens every single day. 120 people die due to gun violence in this country. All the people around that are also going to need much therapy, and that costs money. And it's such a deep issue that needs a lot of addressing. And an assault weapons ban isn't going to fix everything, but it's going to fix a lot of it. The mental health resources are also a huge part of this that Republicans also block. So it's such a multifaceted issue. The other one that's crazy to me is the congressional baseball game shooting, where somebody literally shot up a place where a ton of members of Congress were. Yeah. And still, these people don't care. They don't even talk about it, first of all. Members of Congress were literally shot. They were literally shot. Someone who ran for the speakership was shot. Steve Scalise. And these people still don't think that we need common sense gun reform. I mean, how up the NRA's ass do you have to be to not believe it? Let me ask you now a bunch of questions on your thoughts on different, there's a lot of competing solutions and organizations, and I wonder a lot about what the most effective ones are. So I want to understand what you're doing and why you think it's most effective at this point. But when you talk, before we get to it, when you say how up the NRA's ass they are, I've been covering this issue for my whole career, and I feel like the NRA money mattered so much more than it does now, because I feel like now the gun issue is less about a Republican getting a donation from the NRA or saying they'll primary them if they vote one way or the other, because that's the reality, right? I feel like the issue now has become simply a huge constituency of these gun people, gun rights people, whatever you want to call them. Gun freaks. Well, sure, whatever you want to call them is fine with me. But the point is, NRA doesn't need to fund these people anymore, because the constituents themselves, if you do anything on guns, it's a strike at their entire character, and they will rise up against you and primary you without the NRA money. And I've seen that issue change. That's my opinion, though. It's not really data-based. Yeah. So, you are right in saying that it's not like how it was 5 years ago. The NRA is losing millions of members. They don't have the money anymore. They have money, but it's not like how it was. Now the gun violence prevention movement is actually stronger than these gun lobbyists and massive gun groups. But it's still, in a way, they are still backed by the gun lobby. Like, even if they're not giving them as much money, and I don't even know if that's true. Like, they still might be, they are giving them a ton of money per year. I don't know if it's gone down. I don't know if it's gone up. They are still giving them money, but they're not as powerful as they were in the way, like, they don't have like all the members, but they are still beholden to them because there's still zero. Republicans don't do anything on this issue except like say, no, we need more guns. And like, obviously that doesn't make any sense because we already have like 400 million guns and there's still shootings like every fucking day. So I have no idea what that means. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is about the money for them. It's always about the money. It's why we can't make progress on climate. The same reason, money.
Right.
People don't want to give up the money, and that's the Republican Party in a nutshell, basically. On this issue, that's literally the only reason why we can't make progress.
Let me go to one more broader question, and we'll try to drill down, certainly on the assault weapons ban and policies that you are fighting for and the politics around them in the Senate especially. But I feel like I might have heard you say in my prep, and maybe you don't say this, but I hear a lot of people say that nothing ever changes. And I know that it bothers me, and I know it bothers a lot of activists because activists are out there doing work for free and being threatened all the time. And at the state level, in places like Connecticut and New York, we've elected people who have actually passed legislation at the state level. You mentioned just now a policy, I think, passed through executive action that the Biden administration have passed. A lot of things do happen and do get done as a result of activists. So it always kind of rankles me when people say nothing ever changes. So do you use that phrase? Are you careful about that? Are you specific about national legislation? What are your thoughts around nothing ever happens?
I mean, I'm sure I've said it in the past because like it can get very, very mentally taxing to do this work. Sure. But things really have okay, we don't have an assault weapons ban. We don't have universal background checks, which is ridiculous by itself that we don't have that. Right. We don't have red flag laws. We don't have we don't have common sense gun laws really federally. We have made a lot of progress, right? Like the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was a massive win. That was Republicans talking about guns and doing something about it. It didn't go nearly far enough, but it was a massive step forward. Yeah. That's a win. Okay. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention that opened, that's a massive win. That was something that thousands of young people across the country in red and blue states asked the president for, and he delivered. Across in different states, there's probably hundreds of wins for gun safety a year. It's just not a federal assault weapons ban, so no one's going to hear about it. You know what I mean? So it's not. There are things that happen, but you are right. We just broke the record in this country for the most amount of mass shootings. Right now we broke our own record of last year, and we're over 600 and something. So it is, the issue's not, we're not decreasing gun violence yet. We're not at that point because the laws that we know will work have not been implemented yet. There are wins, but we're nowhere near being able to just say we have done our job, right? And I don't know if we will ever get to a place in this country in this current climate where we will be able to say that. The laws that are in every other highly developed first world country that prohibit people from doing what they do here don't exist here. You can literally buy a gun, an assault weapon in over 50% of the United States. That is ridiculous by itself. Yeah. And there's zero background check, no questions asked. 18 years old, you go, you buy an AR, whatever, commit a mass shooting. Until we get, at the very least, universal background checks, which 91% of the country is in agreement that we need that. No, we're not going to go nowhere near decreasing the amount of gun deaths a year. And it goes up thousands every year, by the way. So it does feel hopeless. And I feel like I'm a natural cynic and the people around me are natural cynics just because of how hard this issue is. It feels like you're trying to climb like Mount Everest at sometimes. But there are wins. It's just very slow ones and they're very small steps.
Well, you can also take breaks and you can also do all kinds of different things in different ways that help make a difference. But I imagine it's tough to know that on this issue and others, you and people your age are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yeah. So I went, I really, a lot of people have been like, you got to take breaks. And I'm like, okay, I will. I started taking a lot of breaks this year. Every Friday, whatever, my girlfriend and I will go out to a movie. And I don't remember the day, but it was, we went and saw the new Martin Scorsese movie. Yeah. I turned my phone on silent. I don't look at my phone. I don't do anything when I go to these movies. I'm just trying to get my mind off of like whatever. I at the end of that movie opened my phone to a barrage of text. That was the night that Lewiston happened. So it's hard to take breaks because there's always a shooting happening. There's always somebody dying. There's always some ridiculous thing that some Republican said about some crazy gun law. And it just makes you wonder, like, am I going out here and taking this break? Is it like selfish in a way? I know it's not, but it does feel that way. So, but you're right. Taking breaks is essential to any activist.
You got to put your mask on first. You got to take care of yourself so you can take care of the issue. And, you know, you also have a certain, I think, right to your 20s. Right. to being a young man and trying to figure out where he's going. You know, you're making films, and, you know, and also you can combine a lot of things in your life, your activism, your art, I'm sure. I'm not trying to be your therapist. I want to learn from you. So let me ask you about the assault weapons ban. Tell me about specifically your work, your thoughts, the policy that you would like to see Congress pass and President Biden sign.
I mean, to me, the assault weapons ban is like the most common sense thing we could possibly do. I mean, when people are walking around this country committing mass shootings on the level they are now with guns that you can just kill 49 people in 5 minutes, which is the real statistics of Pulse. Parkland was 3.5 minutes, by the way. When you can do that in a couple of minutes, obviously we have to start cracking down on this issue. Like, doing nothing hasn't done anything. Anyone who tells you that we need more guns or that it's the Second Amendment right that we need to actually protect here, which is the reason why we can't do anything, they are, I don't know the exact word. I'm trying to think of a word that kind of covers everything. They are complicit in this. They are, you know, maybe they're not rooting for people to die, but by them saying that, people are dying. Okay. So the assault weapons ban is the most comprehensive way that we can end mass shootings right now. Obviously, we're not going to get to 0 a year anytime soon, maybe if ever, but we can make it not 600 a year, but maybe 400 a year.
What does it do? When people say the assault weapons ban, I don't think most people know what it means. And if you remember the assault weapons ban that from 1994, this is different. And by the way, guns are different. They're sold different. They're more powerful. There's more bullets and so on. So how do you see it? Because I think people think assault weapons, they think of the actual AR-15. I think of any gun that can fire a lot of bullets in a short amount of time. So a pistol with a huge clip. I mean, certain guns fire faster, bullets do more damage. But if you can pull the trigger, you know, semi-automatic on a pistol, that would seem like an assault weapon. On a rifle, that would seem an assault weapon. And finally, what is the idea? That they're no longer manufactured or that they're no longer legal to own? Because they're, as you pointed out, there's already hundreds of thousands, I should say millions of actual AR-15s and other weapons that could classify as assault weapons. The gun people always try to trip you up on, do you even know what a gun is, and the classifications and definitions. So help me understand what you're advocating for.
Yeah, they'll always say, like, define an assault weapon. It's really just like the AR-15 style weapons is what you have to think about. Like, not all of them are AR-15. Some of them are like Bushmaster and like Sig Sauer, but it's essentially it's a freeze, right? It's not like a ban. It's a freeze. That's what it is. You're freezing the manufacturing of these weapons, and you're freezing the selling of them, right? So you can't, like, Illinois just enacted an assault weapons ban, and a lot of these gun stores were like, the Democrats are killing my business, and, you know, you just ended my business. If your business is selling assault weapons that people are using in, like, the Highland Park shooting, then maybe you should get into a different line of work. That's not something that I would want to work in.
Yeah.
So it's a freeze in a way. The people who currently have the guns, they're going to be able to keep them. And if you're a responsible gun owner, then you should be happy about that, right? Like, we're trying to make sure that people who are mentally unstable, who wouldn't pass a background check, who get their guns through, like, weird scenarios, like in a gun show or something, like, we're trying to make sure that they can't get them. We're trying to, looking towards the future, ending this, right?
Yeah.
So if you had an AR or whatever, you would be able to keep it. It bans like 2,000 like types, and I don't know every single one of them. I don't think pistols are not included in this. It's just, I mean, these are the most lethal weapons that are available right now. these are weapons of war. The military uses pretty much the exact same kind. And mass shooters use these because they know how effective they are. Like, most mass shooters aren't walking around with most of them are not walking around with a handgun. And if they do use a handgun, they're not killing 20 people. Pulse can only happen with some type of assault weapon, right? Las Vegas can only happen with a guy sitting in a room, squatted like a sniper with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Yeah. So you can only do what you're doing with 7 out of the 10 most deadly mass shootings are used with an assault weapon. This is the most common sense thing that we can do. And anytime we try to talk about with Republicans is an attack on my freedoms, an attack on Second Amendment. And I mean, amendments are not unlimited, right? You can't go into a crowded theater and scream fire, right? Like that, there are limits to every single amendment.
So is your focus is on assault weapons, as you just explained them, and specifically on the types of shootings where a person comes in and kills many people the same day or same time or same moment, more than it is on domestic violence, suicide, accidental death, gang-related, organized crime? Am I differentiating? Are you differentiating in the type of death and the type of weapon used and the type of event?
I mean, a lot of people will like to say to me, like, it's, what are you going to do in like Chicago? And then there's a bunch of gang violence there. And to me, that's a different issue. Like, they're not doing that in the same way that a mass shooter, like in Parkland, they're not doing it for the same reasons. It's different. But gun violence is gun violence. And these laws will prevent gun violence just as a whole. And there's also other laws that I advocate for besides an assault weapons ban, because an assault weapons ban wouldn't end gun violence as its whole. Right. It would do a lot. But when we talk about red flag laws, they're against that. They're against somebody who is a high risk for committing a mass shooting. They're against that person being flagged, and they're against that person prohibited to being able to buy a gun, which is ridiculous. There was a quote from Matt Gaetz, who is just the most dipshit guy on this issue ever. And he goes, I oppose a red flag law because it'll ping your phone every single second with, like, dude, did you just not realize that you just admitted that this happens all the time? That you just said it would ping your phone? Yeah, if the red flags would be going off so much that your phone would never stop alerting you. But I don't even understand how that would be the policy. It's not like an Amber Alert that everybody finds out when somebody around them. It's not how red flag. Like Matt Gaetz is dispatched to take care of the issue. It's not, you're not going to be notified about it.
So now that you've gotten to understand a lot of the players, you've actually met with a whole bunch of congressmen and senators across the country, even as my understanding here. What do you want to see happen? What would you like to see happen? Because and correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is at the federal level, at the congressional level, the House, when run by Democrats, can and has passed comprehensive legislation that would curb gun violence in all the different ways that we've mentioned here. And when Republicans have led the House, everybody gets to have all the guns and grenades that they want to, basically, being a little bit hyperbolic, but no laws. With Democrats, some laws. That's the House. The problem is the United States Senate, and that even with a majority or a slim majority, there are senators in certain states, Democrats is what I'm talking about, that won't vote for this legislation because obviously the Senate works differently. And so you can't get that House legislation through the Senate because you have a few Democrats in certain states that would absolutely lose their reelection if they voted for it. And then the issue becomes, if they lost, a Republican would come in and reverse it if it even passed. What are your thoughts? Is that how it works?
That's essentially it. A lot of the most moderate Democrats in the Senate are unwilling to take a stance on this, which I kind of loathe in a way. You are putting your election over, you're saying that your election is more important than people being gunned down in X amount of place, right? Like, you're saying that matters more. Conversely, like you said, let's say it gets put up for a vote and Mark Kelly, John Tester, Manchin lose their reelection because they voted yes. We're going to have a Republican majority. I would much rather have a Democratic majority than a Republican one. I don't know what the right answer is for that. This is probably why, and I'm sure you saw this, but like 3 days ago, Leader Schumer put the assault weapons ban up for unanimous consent. It wasn't a floor vote, right? So he didn't have to have John Tester vote yes. Schumer can go up. Schumer's in New York. He's going to be fine. He can talk about whatever he wants relating to guns. He's going to be fine. But that's why it wasn't a floor vote. And I love that they did anything on it. Don't get me wrong. I love that they did anything. But it's not a floor vote, right? So these people are not going to have to be pushed to answer. But what we should do as a country is make sure that these people realize that they are safe to vote. Like maybe we should elect someone to that seat who isn't afraid to vote yes on this bill, because saying that you have an election and saying that you're afraid to lose your seat, whatever, that's not going to end this issue. Like, we need a champion in the Senate. We need champions for this.
Well, that's what I don't understand. That's the disconnect. Like, I fully understand what you're saying in terms of wanting to get something done. But if Mark Kelly and Jon Tester lose their seat as a result of the vote on guns, it's not about losing their job. It's about losing the issue. You would lose. We would lose on the issue if they lost their reelection, because they would be replaced by a Republican. That's how I see it. I
mean, you might be right, and I'm sure you are, but
it's because the Senate. But to be clear, I think I am right. But to be clear, it's because the Senate is a fucked up, broken, non-representative institution where Jon Tester represents people in. With all due respect to my friends in Montana, there's like 12 people there, but he gets equal the vote to the California senator. And then one other thing that I'm not making a correction to what you're saying, but when you say Schumer is safe because he's a New York senator, technically you're right. But just to be clear, it's only because of New York City being 9 million people, mostly liberal-ish Democrats who want gun laws. But where I grew up and the rest of New York State, where there's far less people, but a whole lot of land and country, these issues are very controversial and become controversial in our gubernatorial race because people in upstate New York love their guns, Sam. And they're just like everybody in the craziest parts of the state.
Like, how is it possible that George Santos and Schumer can come from the exact same state? Right? Like, there's
that's believable. Have you been to Queens? No, it's a good point, and we can say that over and over. But let me just, so explain your conversations with some of these senators that it is a tough vote. Have you talked to Mark Kelly? Have you talked to Jon Tester?
I mean, we've talked to both of them. I don't know if I'm allowed to say exactly what we said, but for the most part, they have an election coming up. They're not going to vote yes. That's it.
Yeah.
And Mark Kelly supports this legislation. I'm sure Jon Tester supports it.
Yeah, of course. Mark Kelly is part of a gun rights organization he helped found because his wife was shot. I should have mentioned that. Of course. Yes.
Well, yeah. His wife, Gabby Giffords, was shot. She was part of a mass shooting. It wasn't an assault weapon, but it was still a mass shooting. And many of her constituents were killed that day right in front of her. Yeah. And I have undying respect for Gabby Giffords, and Mark Kelly. I'm not saying this to bash them. What they went through is unimaginable.
Yeah.
But Mark Kelly, he currently is not behind an assault weapons ban, but what he is behind is this bill called Go Safe, which is an assault weapons ban in a way, but it's not. It doesn't mention assault weapons and it doesn't say ban. They say that it's gas operated assault weapons, which I am not an expert on, and I'm not an expert on the bill either. But it is in a way an assault weapons ban. I think it's not as broad as the assault weapons ban. Some of the guns would be left out, like the .22 caliber that was used in Highland Park. That would be left out, which is a big issue. And I think that gun companies can just get around the ban, they don't have to report it to the AFT. And maybe the Go Safe bill isn't the best thing right now, but that is Mark Kelly and Heinrich and King, who are some of them are independent and moderates. That is them getting behind a ban. It is a ban, whatever. Call it Go Safe, but it's an assault weapons ban. So the Senate is, like you said, very, very messed up, and I don't know the right answer. I really don't. You have to get to 60 votes in the Senate.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. We're not getting to 60 votes in the Senate on an assault weapons ban anytime soon. I think you have to end the filibuster. That's really it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right about that, unfortunately. And that's going to be a real, real hard thing to do in a country where so many people live on Earth 2, as I call it. And,
and this is the part where it gets mentally challenging to think about. How in the hell are we going to get 60 votes or end the filibuster? That is Mount Everest. When I think about that, that makes me stressed out. So what are we supposed to do about that? I have no idea. The House is a much easier place to get things passed, but you need the Senate and the House. So it doesn't even the House can pass whatever they want, and the Senate's just going to shit all over it essentially.
How much? How much have you? The thing that's helped me a lot is reading civil rights and human rights leaders of the past and reading like, Viktor Frankl or, Holocaust survivor stories, slaves, escape stories, civil rights leaders, like when they talk about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good and just trying to make the best of a shitty situation and keep going and until you get, as the civil rights era in the 60s did, to the Voting Rights Act. And, and then Dr. King was killed. Like how much do you let history's leaders inform you so that you can better be one in this time in your generation?
I mean, I look to what happened in the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement as exactly what will happen with the gun violence prevention movement. It's the same thing. It's like young people and people who are most affected by the issues that they're fighting for going out and demanding change. It's not people who aren't affected that are fighting for change. Like you did not see as like 100,000 white people walking to Washington, right? I'm sure there were a few, but it was Martin Luther King. Right. And then so it's the people who are most affected going and fighting for these issues. So people are like, yeah, but you have no support in the Republican Party. No shit. Like, what do you mean? Like they don't support it. So it's the same. I'm a believer that the world trends progressive and that over time, just the world becomes a better place. Even if we have to take 2 steps back, we're going to take steps forward eventually. And Roe v. Wade being overturned is an example of that. Like there will be a day when we codify abortion rights as a federal law again. It's just not going to be right now. There is always pushback. Like Trump was a reaction to Obama, right? All of the white supremacists came out from whatever cave they were hiding in and said, no, fuck this guy. We're going to put a racist white guy in there. Like there is always steps back. But over time, I believe that the world trends progressive and that change always will happen.
Well, there you go. I love your answer. I love your understanding. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I love clearly you have thought about that and a lot. I appreciate that. I wonder, Sam, what other people, especially young men your age, that are the gun rights people, that are like the Andrew Tate people, or I don't know how you describe them, but like they're on the opposite side of this issue than you, even though they are the same age, going through a generation of mass shootings in their schools, and yet they want more guns. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. Obviously, young people overwhelmingly are progressive in general, but there are obviously some. So I wonder what your experience has been with them. Have you ever like debated them or got into it with them or engaged them? Do you try to work with them where you might find common ground, God forbid?
Yeah, I've talked to a bunch of people who are my age who are right leaning on this issue.
Are those conversations, if those conversations are published anywhere, I'd love to see them.
I don't think any of them have been.
Okay.
It's more last summer when we were on, we did a bus tour last summer around the country with Change the Ref. And that was more so where it was. Like people would come up to us, or people we'll stop at gas stations and we'll have conversations with them there. But like, let's make no mistake about it. The Gen Z is a Democratic Party, right? Like a vast majority of young people are not Republicans, right? Maybe they're not Democrats, but they're not Republicans. They are progressive leaning people who want change.
Yeah.
Any talk of like, but there's like some young people who disagree, like in a way, it doesn't matter. I kind of don't care about their opinions. It's not going to be something that determines the end of this fight. When there's a shooting and when gun violence affects your life, you interpret it one of two ways. One, you interpret it my way, which was we need less guns. And then the other way is you interpret it the Republican way, which was you need more guns. And my answer to that is that the way that in which you're thinking that guns will solve issues, right? I understand what you're thinking. Well, why don't we just make people safe by having everyone got a gun in their holster? There's been data, there's studies, statistics shown that is not the way to go about it. When we have common sense gun control in place, gun violence decreases. Like when we had that assault weapons ban in 94, mass shootings went down. When it expired, they went up. Like what other proof do you need? We have 400 million guns in this country. Yeah. There's still thousands of deaths more every single year. So, I understand why someone's brain might go to, but like we need more cops in schools. And if everyone had a gun, there'd be no gun violence. But like that's just not true. A lot of people have guns right now, and there is no decrease of gun violence. So that's what I say to them. I also point to them that, but look what happened in Uvalde, where a lone gunman, just like every other mass shooting, walked into the school and gunned down 21 people. There were cops out on the site of that school. There were 376 of them from every agency that you could name. None of them were able to stop one person with an AR. Not one of them. In Parkland, we had school resource officers there. This guy ran away, right? Like, he didn't stop it. He didn't do anything to stop this guy. We had cops there. Didn't stop my cousin from being killed. The only way to decrease gun violence is for common, and I'm not someone who says ban all guns. Guns are confiscated. That's an entirely stupid thing to say, and I also just don't believe in it.
Right.
But you just need common sense gun laws put in place, and the only way to do that, and this is where the young people come in part. This is why I mentioned that young people are a Democratic Party, is we're going to come out in droves and vote. Like, look what happened in 2023 when we had these special elections in Ohio, which is kind of a red. Some people will say it's a purple state, but it's pretty a red leaning state.
Yeah.
Abortion was rejected. The pro-life value was rejected.
Yeah, I know what you meant.
Right?
Everybody knows what happened. Yeah, it's a really, because that issue is probably even more animated. I mean, these two issues, and climate, and I'm sure plenty of others are really important to young people. But yeah,
young people are progressives, if nothing else, liberals, if nothing else. We care about three main issues. It's climate, preserving our climate. It's women's reproductive freedoms being a real thing, and ending gun violence. Those are the three biggest things that young people care about. And all of those things just so happen to be policy choices that Republicans are horrible on. Not horrible on, they disagree on it. They don't think that any of those things should be should be solved.
And by the way, it doesn't mean, in case anybody might think, it doesn't mean that young people don't care about immigration or LGBT issues, but I believe Sam is right when he says those three issues are the ones that intersect and overlap across gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, overwhelmingly for people of a certain age. That's, I think, accurate.
Yeah. And, LGBTQ plus rights and civil rights intersect with gun violence. In a way, those movements are intertwined. Look what happened at Pulse, which was a gay nightclub. Look what happened at Club Q, which was another gay nightclub. Yep. Those are hate crimes. Those
people
who
are going to be targeted more likely in their church or in a nightclub, or got now at drag shows and all it's a great point you're making. And of course they are concerned, if not even more concerned, because they're more likely to be killed in any house of worship or school or just.
We all have the way I see it is that everyone who lives in this country and enjoys the freedoms that we do, we have a responsibility to fight for more change, right? Like, we can't just sit on our ass and expect this to happen. That was me for my entire life. I heard about these shootings and I was like, it's going to get solved though. Like, that's what, it's an adult problem. Well, it's not an adult problem. And they've proven consistently that they will fail every single time they're given the opportunity. Every single young person in this country has a responsibility to come out and vote, to come out and advocate, to organize, and to make change. And young people are our generation is that was mean. I'm so sorry. The young people are we're the most politically engaged generation in recent history. Like, we come out and vote, and it's because these issues affect us the most. We're going to have to deal with the ramifications of climate. We deal with the ramifications of zero gun safety laws being put in place. That's just it.
Well, listen, son, I'm just saying that because you called me old. No, it's our fault. No, it's your generation, my generation. That's why I'm really psyched to get the opportunity to talk to someone your age who is as passionate, as informed, as active as you are. And I'm very grateful. Let's do it again whenever you want. I'll be obviously following you on all the social media outlets and platforms and everywhere you're going, as I hope everybody listening will, and contact you if they want. Let's end on a light, fun, easy note, which is tailored to you. I am putting you on the spot. Something I learned during the conversation is that you are you want to be a film composer. You write music for films. So here you go. This is off the top of my head. I'm not good at music, much less film. But who is the best composer, living or dead, film? Is it Hans Zimmer? Is it Alan Silvestri? Is it John Williams or John Barry? And why can I not name a female film score composer?
It's John Williams. He is the best ever. And any other answer is just wrong, like objectively wrong.
And are you being original or unoriginal when you say that amongst your peers? Like, do we all agree on that, or are you just asking for a fight?
No, I think everyone agrees. Like Hans Zimmer's great. I love Alan Silvestri. John Barry's wonderful. And there's.
Are you impressed Are you impressed at all with my four polls off the top of my head on that?
Yeah, John Barry is a kind of a deep cut. Honestly, I'm surprised that you got
Dances with Wolves.
Yeah. And Out of Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like that's a deep cut. I'm surprised. those are 4 great names that you pulled. I go to a school where a lot of people are not involved in film. It's like people who play violin, they want to be in like the Boston Symphony Orchestra or like the LA Phil and playing like the Hollywood Bowl. So like they're not interested in these kind of things. But everyone knows John Williams, right? He's the best ever. He is. I could pull out like 5, 10 John Williams scores right here, and I just will score study them. He is the best person ever.
Got it. Thank you so much for talking to me, Sam. I really appreciate it. Really inspiring.
Of course. And can I say one last thing that is
anything you want? Yep.
It's a high note. And I'm sure we can talk about this later when we announce it. But, I talked a lot about in this podcast about how young people are activated and they're politically engaged, and they are. So something that we are doing, I and a lot of other Gen Z leaders across the country are planning a national tour across the country, and we'll announce it later. But our goal is to stop in the most flippable purple districts around the country and have an impact there and flip them from red to blue, because there's about 18 across the country who are red, and they are very susceptible to losing their seat. And with our presence there, we can have a real impact.
That is real interesting. I want to know more about that. I may even join you, put a camera, put a mic on it, edit like the conversation. That's a really cool idea, and I want to publicize as much as I can and be on board however I can be helpful. So that's exciting, and if there's any information about that, you can give it to me and I'll put it in the show links. If not, we will follow up and do that. But that sounds really good.
So like, I maybe got dark in this podcast.
Not at all,
I apologize for that. But change is coming. Hope is real. And in a way, that's all we have. We got to keep the hope. So thanks for having me.
And I'm going to bring up an inspiring score as you said that. What should I do?
Oh, I think the most inspiring score is probably E.T. Just listen to the last, when Elliot gets on the bike and he rides across the moon. That is what I listen to when I'm going to like a lobbying meeting in DC.
You got it. It's playing now for listeners. Thanks, Sam. Congrats. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Well, there you go. Sam Schwartz. Thank you to my friend JoJo from Jers for recommending him, and to Sam for being part of the Gen Z Zeries. Go learn more about Sam in the show notes and follow him and support him, and let's let the song finish. If you talk over it, apparently you don't have to pay the copyright. And I just played 30 seconds of it. I think John Williams is going to be able to afford his mortgage. Here's our song taking us out from the great John Carroll, who will be in Vegas with me and many of your other favorites, so don't forget to mark that off, and we'll give you all the information on it soon. Vegas, March 22nd and March 23rd. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Grammy Award winner, the great John Carroll, johncarroll.org, taking us out. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Stand up, let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the face to stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's just the time to know and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand